Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So, the intro montage, I went ahead and got the blow-off valve placed and everything on Russ's Supra. And it's a little bit difficult to see. Hopefully you guys can see it in there. But right there is the Bubba Sonic. And Russ did a great job marking out where he wanted the blow-off valve to be located. And like I said, it's a little bit difficult to see on camera, but the outlet horn or funnel is positioned pretty much perfectly in this air dam right here. And it should make a ruckus whenever it's venting air off after he's making a pull. So we can't do any of the titanium work right now, as I just placed the order for all of the materials for this car, but there is some foundational work that needs to be knocked out prior to doing any of that titanium work. And what I'm going to focus efforts on initially today is modifying this front wastegate provision. So like I showed in the intro video, the compressor outlet runs into the front wastegate provision. And in the past, this is something that I just left up to the customers, or to my customers rather, and always made the note that, hey, you'll probably have to cut the compressor outlet and weld an extension tube on it, and that's just kind of the way that it went. But now, like I said, since I have this car with pretty much all factory amenities still in place, it's kind of now or never to modify my fixturing for this front wastegate provision and get it so cutting the compressor outlet is a non-necessity. And I also need to make it work with the Mark IV chassis as well as the Mark III chassis, which you guys can probably see my front clip right over there. So in order to do this, the first thing I need to do is disassemble some of what we have going on here. I need to pull off both of the wastegates, the turbo, and then the manifold can come out of the engine bay here, and I can get to cutting and fitting the new provision. The modifications on Russ's exhaust manifold are now completed, and this is what I've ended up with. So I re-angled this front wastegate provision a bit, and I'm still in a good location at the wastegate outlet to not run into the AC lines, and the wastegate wound up rotating a little bit, but you can see as I rotate the compressor cover, there isn't a ton of clearance, but there is certainly clearance to the compressor outlet, or from the compressor outlet to the wastegate provision and the #1 primary here. So, unfortunately, I was not able to find kind of a happy medium that would fit both the Mark IV and the Mark III chassis with this updated wastegate provisioning. I think to make it work the way that I want it to is going to require a redesign of the billet collector itself. And don't fear, I have an idea of how to make that a reality. It'll just require me contacting my collector manufacturer and going over some design ideas with them. But for Russ's car, this is squared away pretty well, and now I guess I can move on to the next step, which will be taking the outlet flange off of this compressor cover and welding somewhere in here. There it is. This 3-inch Van Gen assembly onto it. Now this is not a Vibrant Van Gen, as Russ didn't want a big Vibrant logo on it, but it uses the same clamps and same ferrules and everything else in a little bit cleaner clamp that doesn't have Vibrant plastered on it. So I'm going to take one of these weld flanges and place it, or put it in place of the compressor outlet here, so that way we can use that assembly there. It'll look cool, it'll function well, and everything will be a little bit better with it. All of the non-titanium foundational work on Russ's Supra is now completed. So, the compressor outlet is now modified with the Van Gen assembly right there. Like we said, or like I said before, the forward wastegate provision is all modified as well. And this setup at this point in time is ready for the titanium work to begin. So I'm still waiting on the package to arrive from Taycan. Once it gets here, then it will be full speed ahead, full bore titanium work on this car, and I cannot wait for that to happen. Today, the descent into titanium madness on Russ's car begins. So I had all of the titanium materials from Taycan arrive, and today we are going to begin with the downpipe. So I have the first few materials for the downpipe right here. We have the turbine outlet flange. We have a 4-inch 45-degree elbow and a 4-inch 90-degree elbow. And ideally, those materials will get us from the turbine outlet right here over to this pocket right here, which is where the downpipe will begin to make its downward run, or begin on its downward trajectory, I guess would be the correct terminology. Well, I made some great progress on Russ's downpipe today, and there are still a few items that need to be added to it, the O2 bung and the wastegate recirculations. However, the bulk of the downpipe, the main body of it, is completed, and it fits like a glove. So, hopefully it isn't too dark to see in here, but you can see the downpipe makes its way out of the turbine outlet, snakes down around, down underneath, and I'm not going to raise the car up right now, but the downpipe outlet is in a very advantageous location to be able to begin building the midpipe off of it. Now, I did not film very much as far as the fabrication went for the downpipe, as with the tight confines that I was working in, there wasn't a great way to get the camera in there in addition to doing the work at the same time. So what we lacked in fabrication content with the downpipe, I'll more than make up for it with the rest of the work that is to come on this car. Well, an interesting problem to start the day. I went ahead and pulled Russ's whole hot part setup so far out of his Mark IV, and my intent today was to begin the wastegate recirculation tubes. However, ran into an issue with the two wastegate outlet flanges rather. So, if we look at the two flanges side by side, on the right is the Garrett wastegate outlet flange, and on the left is the Tycon one. So you can see that the discrepancy is in the height of this shoulder right here. This tapered shoulder is what the wastegate outlet clamp itself grabs onto to squeeze this flange to the wastegate itself. So you can see with how much shorter that this Garrett one is. Let's see if I place that on the wastegate. Now you can see with the Garrett flange on there, the clamp sits in its perfect location. It's able to clamp together, squeeze everything together. Happy days. However, with the Tycon flange, if I get this in position, you can see that we don't quite have the width of that clamp that we need to be able to fit it over top of the Tycon wastegate outlet flange and the wastegate itself. So this is no dig at Tycon, no dig at Garrett. It's just the way that it is, and it's just kind of the issue that I'm running into now. For whatever reason, Garrett they made their clamp and their wastegate outlet flange a bit different than the traditional 45, 46, or 44, 45, 46 millimeter V-band wastegate outlets. The inlet side was the exact same, everything clamped together there. It's just this outlet that is the issue. So what the plan at this point is to send one of the Garrett flanges, one of the Tycon flanges, or both of the Tycon flanges rather, up to Russ so he can go through and machine the Tycon flange down to meet the dimensions of the Garrett flange, at least on that mating surface and that mating shoulder where we really need that dimension to be a little bit smaller. So not the end of the world, but it at least right now puts an end to my ability to make any additional progress on the on this downpipe and this wastegate recirc setup. So it is what it is, and I guess now I can go ahead and probably the logical thing to do is to get started on the cold side intercooler tube. Well, I've unboxed and unbagged the first materials for Russ's cold side intercooler tube, and we are going the pie cut route for it. So it's been a while since I've done a pie cut section like this, but it's what Russ wanted, and he's a good friend of mine, so I obliged, and that's what we're going to do. So these are Tycon pre-cut, pre-polished 3.5-inch tight radius pie cuts, and sitting in front of me unbagged is a 90-degree bend's worth, and I have another 45 degrees in this bag over here on standby in case the first 90-degree section is not enough. So when I am putting these together, you can see right above my middle finger there, or right on my middle finger rather, the weld seam. I will align those as where these seams are positioned will allow you to make the bend be tangent or all in line with itself. So with that being said, kind of the only thing to do at this point is to start tacking these pieces together, start building the bend, and go from this flange right here to that coupler right down there. Just like that, Russ's cold side intercooler tube is fabricated, a couple of the welds are done, and the pie cut section is now ready to weld. So this wasn't tremendously difficult to fit, and thanks to Taikon for having the pre-made pie cut pieces, that makes these pie cut jobs infinitely easier than it was in the old days when you used to have to cut your own pie cuts and prep and deburr and alter the surface finish and all of that. The fact that you can get pie cuts now, zip open a bag and get right to tacking, right to fabricating is such a massive step forward, and I cannot thank the Taikon crew enough for introducing and implementing that into this industry. But you can see that everything fits pretty nicely, and it fits down in the coupler below, comes up, fits to the Vangen assembly right there. And the one outstanding bit that I'll wait until I have all of the welding work, or the remaining welding work done, is an 8th NPT bung for an IAT sensor, which will go somewhere on the back of the tube here per Russ's request, and will be nice, cool, hidden, and all of that. But with that being said, and the fact that I'm not going to get into doing all of this pie cut welding right now, I think that will be about the end of this episode. So huge steps were made with Russ's project, and there are plenty more to come in the upcoming episodes. I'm very happy with the initial progress I was able to make on this, and although we did run into the issue with the wastegate outlet flanges, Those are now on their way up to Russ, so we can put them in his lathe, turn them down to the appropriate dimension, and then I can get started on the wastegate recirculations in the next episode. But for now, with this tube being all fabricated, the downpipe all done aside from the wastegate provisions or wastegate recirc provisions, and all of the foundational modifications done to this, I think that is a fair amount of work that's been accomplished on this car and a good point to end this episode on. So, thank you guys, as always, for coming along on all these different journeys and adventures with me. And I hope that you guys are enjoying the RSP car content. I know I'm really enjoying working on this thing, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to work on it in the first place. So a big thank you to Russ for trusting me to do this work for him. A huge thank you to the Tycon crew for always supplying me with the best titanium materials that money can buy. And a huge thank you to you guys for coming back week after week to see what I'm working on here. But with all of that being said, and before I drone on any longer, that will be the end of this episode. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, check out the website for manifolds, for merch, for all things good that way. And I will see you all in the next episode.